I spent 6 years building a case against the coworker who tried to destroy my career. Here is the full story. I want to tell this story carefully because the details matter, and because I have seen enough posts where the storyteller's anger gets in the way of the facts. I am 43 years old. I have worked in project management for most of my adult life. I am genuinely good at it, not in a boastful way, but in the concrete way where my outcomes are measurable and my client relationships are long-standing. I know what I am worth professionally. That clarity is important to what follows. Marcus was hired as a senior principal approximately 6 years ago. He came with what appeared to be an exceptional record: graduate degree from a well-regarded institution, prior roles at recognizable companies, published work, and the kind of polished confidence in interviews that hiring committees often mistake for competence. Everyone was genuinely excited. I was excited too. I introduced myself on his first day with real enthusiasm and meant every word of it. I noticed something was wrong within the first 3 weeks. It was not dramatic. There was no incident I could point to and say definitively, "This is the moment I knew." It was more like a series of small, precise wrongnesses that assembled themselves into a pattern over time. Marcus had a particular way of summarizing other people's contributions in meetings that made them sound like his own. A slight rephrasing here, a repositioned pronoun there, the kind of thing that could easily be written off as imprecision or enthusiasm. I took note of it in my private work journal, which I had kept for years as a professional habit, and I moved on. Over the following months, the pattern escalated. My deliverables began appearing in his presentations. Concepts I had introduced in working sessions showed up in his executive summaries with no attribution. When I raised a strong technical point in a meeting, he had a way of repeating it 30 seconds later with slightly different phrasing, leaving half the room attributing the idea to him. When I flagged a major risk on one of our largest accounts, correctly, as it turned out, he delivered my analysis to leadership as though it were his own thinking, received significant credit for it, and when I tried to establish my authorship, I was met with confused looks that told me he had gotten there first. By the end of his first year, my relationship with senior leadership had quietly changed. I could feel it without being able to name the cause. The project lead role I had been clearly positioned for went to someone else. In my review, I received feedback about needing to improve executive presence and proactive communication, feedback completely at odds with every review I had received in the 4 years prior. I later understood this feedback had been seeded in leadership's perception of me by Marcus through private conversations I was not present for and was not told about. That was the moment I decided to stop being passive about what was happening and start treating it as the systematic campaign it clearly was. I began documenting everything with a precision that consumed a significant portion of my mental energy for the better part of 2 years. Every meeting was logged: date, attendees, what was said, what the original source of each idea was. Every email chain was saved in a personal archive. Every piece of work I produced was preserved with metadata intact: creation dates, edit histories, version logs. I began sending myself brief summaries after significant conversations, time-stamped and detailed, creating a contemporaneous record that could not easily be challenged as reconstructed after the fact. I also began talking quietly to trusted colleagues, not in an alarmist way, careful, specific conversations with 3 people I trusted, each of whom had independently noticed the same pattern and were relieved to discover they were not imagining it. 2 of them agreed to document their own experiences in writing. One eventually became a formal witness in what came later. 14 months into my investigation, I found the thing I had been building toward without knowing exactly what shape it would take. In the course of my legitimate project management responsibilities, I was reviewing procurement records related to a major proposal our team had submitted the previous quarter. The proposal had won us a contract worth significant revenue. Marcus had presented it to the client. He had received a substantial bonus. He had been publicly credited with the win at a company all-hands meeting. The core analytical framework in that proposal, the section our clients later said was the primary reason they selected us over competitors, was work I had produced over approximately 6 weeks the previous year. I could prove this through metadata and version history showing I had authored it entirely on my own. The language in the proposal matched my internal document in ways that went far beyond coincidence. I spent 2 weeks organizing my documentation into a clear presentation. I was not emotional about it. I was almost clinical, the way you get when you have been sitting with something for a long time and you have made your peace with the outcome before it arrives. I requested a meeting with the Chief Operating Officer, the Chief People Officer, and the head of legal. I sent them a summary document the night before so they could review it at their own pace. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. I did not editorialize. I did not accuse. I presented facts chronologically with supporting documentation at every step. When they asked questions, I answered precisely and pointed to the relevant evidence. Marcus was placed on administrative leave within 48 hours. The internal investigation conducted by outside counsel took 3 weeks. It confirmed my findings and uncovered 2 additional instances of similar behavior involving other employees that I had not been aware of. He was terminated with cause. There were subsequent legal proceedings I cannot describe in detail due to a confidentiality agreement. What I can tell you is this: I received a formal written apology from company leadership. I received the project lead role I should have received 18 months earlier. I received financial compensation for the contributions that had been misrepresented and the professional harm that resulted. 3 colleagues who had been similarly affected received their own remedies. The 2 years of documentation were not pleasant. They required a sustained patience that did not come naturally to me. There were many moments when I wanted to confront him directly, escalate prematurely, or simply quit and go somewhere cleaner. I did not do any of those things, not because I am particularly disciplined by nature, but because I understood that the only thing that would actually work was evidence. Patience is not passive. In this context, patience was the most strategic choice available. The lesson is simple: document everything always, even when you have no reason to believe you will need it. Keep copies. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, but do not act on instinct alone. Act on instinct backed by facts. And understand that justice, when it comes, tends to come slowly and completely rather than quickly and partially. I waited. It was worth it. People sometimes ask me whether I feel bad about what happened to Marcus, or whether I think I went too far. I have thought about this seriously, and my honest answer is no. I do not feel bad, and no, I do not think I went too far. What I did was document the truth and present it to the people who needed to know it. Every piece of evidence I gathered was real. Every conclusion the investigation reached was one the facts supported. I did not exaggerate, fabricate, or manipulate anything. I simply refused to let the situation continue unaddressed. I do feel something when I think about the friendship I thought Marcus and I might have had in a different version of events. I was genuinely excited when he joined the company. I thought we might work well together. That version of things did not exist, and grieving a version of reality that was never real is a strange kind of loss. But I have made my peace with it. The professional consequences for me, in the aftermath, were meaningful. The promotion came through within 3 months. My relationship with senior leadership shifted in ways that were visible and substantial. 3 of my colleagues who had been similarly affected told me privately that my willingness to see it through had made a difference not just for me, but for the culture of the team. One of them said something I have thought about many times since. She said that what Marcus had been counting on, above everything else, was that no one would bother to do the work required to stop him. She was almost right, but almost is not the same as right. I still keep a work journal. I still document significant meetings, save important emails, preserve version histories on anything I produce. I did these things before any of this happened, and I will do them for the rest of my career. Not because I expect to need them, but because the habit of careful documentation is simply good professional practice. The fact that it also turns out to be the most effective form of self-protection available to someone in a situation like mine is, I suppose, a useful thing to know.